Sports Talk Chicago. Here with Jon Zaghloul, and we are back and ready for today's special guest. He's the White Sox beat writer for MLB.com and a BBWAA member. Please welcome Scott Merkin to the program. Scott, it's great to have you on. How are you?
John, good to hear your voice. Good to be on, and thanks for having me.
So, Scott, what was your reaction to the White Sox sweep over the Cubs this weekend?
Well, I think I kind of tweeted this. I thought when Liam Hendriks struck out Sergio Alcantara in the eighth inning with, I think it was Chirinos on second, and the game tied. And then he struck out Ian Happ with Matt Duffy on second in the ninth inning with the winning run. I pretty much thought it was going to be a sweep because that's not a very good Cubs team. No offense to anyone working hard for the Cubs right now on the field, trying to get things done. But let's face it, it's not a very good team. And, Kyle Hendricks has been amazing this year. I think even in this horrible stretch, in his last 16 starts, he's 11-0 with like a 2.80 ERA. So when you looked at those pitching matchups, even though Alzolay has had some, nice moments this year, but you just kind of figured game one was the chance. I mean, who knows what'll happen in the three at the end of the month, but it went pretty much as I expected. The Sox were a better team. They're very good. And this is not taking anything away from how good they are, but they're very good at beating up, the bad teams. And that's what really good teams do, right? I mean, there's no reason to mess around when you're playing Baltimore and Pittsburgh and the Cubs. And I guess the Tigers are a little better now, but all those teams that are near the bottom, because, that shows one of the reasons why you're a good team. It's kind of hard to beat up on every team. There's a lot of good teams in baseball. So, I kind of figured that's how it was going to end up. And, they got a great pitching performance by Rodon before he went on the IL today. And then they also, had a power outburst on that Sunday night against Zach Davies.
How surprising was that Sunday night baseball performance?
Well, I think I don't know how to say this without being rude, but I think it was more surprising that Zach Davies hit the Dodgers for 6 innings earlier this year. He's kind of a middle of the rotation, back end of the rotation type of starter. I know he's had some very good success in the past, with the Brewers and that sort of thing, and he's had some moments with the Cubs, but he wasn't fooling anyone on Sunday night. And that's, Eloy loves playing in those games. He said it's kind of in the past now, even though he'll never forget. I think anyone who gets traded remembers it, right? Even if it was for the purpose of the Cubs trying to repeat in 17 by adding much needed pitching in Jose Quintana. But he loves playing against them. Anderson wasn't even supposed to be in that lineup and then kind of talked his way back in and hit the first pitch for a home run. So not shocking, because the Sox certainly have increased their power output, I'd say, over the last month to like 5 weeks.
Was the sweep itself significant, Scott? Because you mentioned this was not a top Cubs team by any stretch. Is that still significant, though, to sweep them and have this momentum moving forward?
I think it's good bragging rights for fans. I really, I talked to some players beforehand, and they played it down as it was just another game. And I really believe, I'm sure they're glad they won all three, and it gives extra bragging rights to the fans who have been so supportive of them this year and over the years during the rebuild. But, really, it's just, they have, I think, since basically 2003, in my mind. 2003 is when the Cubs came within 5 outs of going to the World Series, and probably should have won the World Series that year. Then in 2005, the Sox turned in one of the most dominant postseason performances of all time. And then, of course, in 16, the Cubs won. So I think it's nice to beat your crosstown rival. It's nice to go into their ballpark and take 3, but there's bigger fish to fry. The old days where everything was centered on these series, after the interleague started, where you got to beat the Cubs, you got to beat the Sox. I think it's still nice, but I think it's, both teams, well, not so much the Cubs now, but they did while the Sox are going through the rebuild. And now the Sox have much bigger fish to fry. I think if you would have gone to Rick Hahn and Kenny Williams and said, hey, I got news for you. You're going to go 0-6 against the Cubs this year, but you're going to win the World Series. I think they might maybe cringe for a second and then go, okay, we're good with that. We'll take it. So again, nice bragging rights for the fans, for the players, 3 more wins, and move on to the next series.
Scott Merkin here on Sports Talk Chicago. Scott, what's your take on the Sox new additions from the deadline?
Well, it was very good moves. They made a move to trade Nick Madrigal, who was, projected, it looked like, as the second baseman of the future, although he's out for this year with the hamstring tear. And in doing that, they also got a guy to replace him in Cesar Hernandez, who's a very talented guy and actually hitting for a lot of power this year too, has 21 home runs. And Rick Hahn talked about this, that he sat down with Kenny Williams and they said, if we could get one guy, if we were restricted to one guy to add to this team that really kind of put us over the top, who would it be? And they both said Craig Kimbrel. So, they had to give up something good for him. Yeah, I think Cody Hoyer is going to be a late inning closer type for the Cubs, and Madrigal is going to fit very well in that lineup with his talent set, because a lot of swing and miss in that Cubs lineup, big time swing and miss in that Cubs lineup. So I think Madrigal is going to be a key guy for their offense moving forward. But I mean, Kimbrel not only is going to help them this year, but they have an option for him next year, and the same with Hernandez. So very good. And then don't forget Ryan Tepera. So now you're looking at a bullpen with, Liam Hendricks, Craig Kimbrel, Michael Kopech, Ryan Tepera, Aaron Bummer, Garrett Crochet, Ronaldo Lopez, Jose Ruiz. That's a pretty solid group from 1 through 8. I think you can make a case that Jose Ruiz would probably be pitching, higher leverage innings for maybe a slightly lesser team, and only because they have so many accomplished guys in that role already. So, I mean, I'm saying he's that talented, and he's considered kind of the 8th guy of that bullpen. So they're in good shape going into the postseason. The postseason, the games get shortened quite a bit, and you have the guys who are ready to do that with the White Sox. So good moves made. But I know the Sox fans wanted, I might have wanted a right fielder and Chris Bryant or something like that, but that wasn't happening. So, I mean, they got the guys that they needed to get to improve this team. And I still hold to the fact, even though people get angry at me, but the biggest moves that they're going to have at the trade deadline or after the trade deadline is Eloy Jimenez coming back, Luis Robert coming back, and probably in the not too distant future, Yasmani Grandal coming back. So, I mean, those are guys who are going to do it every day for you. You saw what Eloy Jimenez's capabilities are already when he's on a roll, and you didn't have to give anything up for them, except you had to make a couple roster moves, to rearrange things, but you didn't trade anyone to get him. So, I mean, those are 3 huge moves, and really putting the Sox in good position going into October.
Why is that an unpopular opinion? Because it is factual. It's correct that all these guys are going to come back and they will make a difference. Why is that unpopular?
I think people read into it as saying, like, I was already making an excuse that Rick and Kenny and the front office weren't going to make any moves. And I never said that. I was convinced they were going to make at least 1 move, and they ended up making 3 moves. But I was just saying that even if they make moves, and they made a huge move in Kimbrel, no question about it, I still think Jimenez, Robert, and Grandal are the bigger moves. And people just, there's always someone to argue on Twitter, and I get that. Trust me, I've done that with Michigan sports too, and that kind of thing, but I never said these were the trades. I said these are the biggest impacts that are going to have, at the trade deadline or beyond, and I still believe that's going to be the case.
How do you explain Eloy's success in his comeback? Because he's been great since he's come off injury.
Yeah, he had a little bit of a slow start, which was understandable. You need a little bit of time to get your time. And I think it's just he's good. He's a really good player. And who knows what he would have produced if he would have been healthy all year. I mean, he might have led the American League, not take away from the mystifying experience that is Shohei Ohtani, who has just been unbelievable this whole year and everything he's done. But, he might have led the American League in home runs if he was healthy all year. But, it's good for him. I mean, he's got a great attitude about life, let alone baseball. And I think this is just what he is. He's a guy who is, I don't know, questionable is the word, but a work in progress defensively, but is elite offensively. Probably one of the better, even in his short career, which is what basically parts of 2 seasons, now 3 right now. He's, an elite offensive force in the American League.
Do you expect him to stay hot and stay at this pace down the stretch?
I mean, I don't know if you can guarantee any, like saying he's going to hit, 4 home runs in every 7 games or something like that. But I think, he's a consistent force. I mean, I think teams will obviously, study him as they have in the past and try and find the holes in his swing or try and find the weak spots. And, there may be at 0 for 10. I mean, look at Tim Anderson, who's been about as consistent as anyone in the game since he won the batting title in 2019. And he's had stretches where he goes 1 for 20. He finished with 1, as a matter of fact, at the end of last year, which I think cost him back-to-back batting titles. But you're still good. I mean, I think, the thing with Eloy is when he's on, he can carry a team. And when he's off, there are still guys in that lineup who can pick him up. So it should be fine.
How about Luis Robert? What's his role moving forward?
I think, they're going to probably slow play him a little bit at the beginning. And by slow play, I mean like not playing him 9-10 straight games, maybe play like 7 out of 10. And I think that's the case with everyone. And I think people have to understand that, and I'm not trying to lecture anyone, but, like Andrew Vaughn, people get upset when they sit him for, like 3 out of 7 games or 3 out of 8 games. Well, I get it that they want to see Andrew Vaughn win Rookie of the Year. And geez, he's been tremendous this year, especially adjusting so quickly to left field, right field, third base, second base. They might as well pitch him and catch him too while they're at it, but I mean, he's above his career high for innings played, games played, at bats, that sort of thing. So you want him fresh in October. He's going to play every day in October, maybe barring, no, I think every day. I don't think it's going to matter what the matchup is. I think he's playing every day in October. So you want him ready to go. So that means sitting a few games here in August and here in September, then that's what it's got to be. They're 10.5 up. I think maybe 9 on the loss side with 47 to play after today. That's almost not mathematically impossible, but pretty darn close. So they have the benefit, unlike the last time they won the division in 2008, where they needed every last out to get to the playoffs. They have the benefit of setting things up, setting their rotation up, setting their position players up, and really being fresh and ready once the postseason begins in October.
What does that mean for October? To have that luxury of setting everything up and kind of waltzing into the playoffs knowing you're already going to get in, there isn't a fight at the end of the year.
Well, I think it's good. It's good as long as you're careful with it. Like, you don't want to get lazy, and I don't mean lazy, but you don't want to get like complacent. Tony La Russa always gets angry when I or anyone else mentions the word comfortable. He likes confident. He doesn't like comfortable. He doesn't allow comfortable in the clubhouse. So I think as long as they don't get complacent or comfortable, they're fine. But the bottom line is, you can take a chance like Carlos Rodon, who's, obviously having a little bit of shoulder issue right now, causing him to go on the IL. You don't have to say to him, well, we need you to kind of try and pitch through this. We'll rest you here, but we can't, we're in a fight for the last playoff spot. They're basically in, and they can move forward, for that. So I think it does make a difference. The biggest thing that's going to make a difference is you'll be able to absolutely line your starting rotation up exactly as you want it, for a 5-game series, and then you hope for a 7-game series. So there'll be no, so to speak, excuses, because everything will be ready to go. And literally, that last week of the season, if you feel like it, you could probably sit all 5, or, just totally switch the rotation to make it work where, you have your first 3-4 ready to go in the playoffs.
What do they do with their rotation? Are they going to go 3 or 4, or how do you think that'll work in the playoffs?
It's interesting. I mean, they have 5 capable starters, but, you rarely see 5 pitch in a playoff. Like, you rarely see a game 5 in a division series, if ever, with, the 5th starter starting that game. Obviously, it almost never happens. So I would think they go at the most 4, and it'll be very interesting. I mean, I would guess right now, Keuchel is a veteran, so he's been there a number of times. He's pitched for a World Series team. So I don't know if they've believed that, like Cease would be an easier move to work out of the bullpen, to work in relief, than it would be for Keuchel. But based on results, you'd probably, I don't know the exact alignment, but you'd have Lynn, Giolito, Rodon, and probably Cease right now. But I think that's still, a work in progress and something to be decided.
What do you think they should do? Who do you think they should put in that rotation?
Well, I think you got to wait and see how September plays out for the end of it. I mean, I think Giolito, Lynn, and Rodon, assuming he's healthy, obviously, are a lock. And then I think, you look and see what you have with Cease and Keuchel. You might be able to combine somewhere. You have Kopech, who might be able to throw you a couple innings in a certain situation. So, I think right now, if you had to make a decision, say if the playoff started if the playoff started like this weekend, I think Cease would be your 4th starter, right? I mean, he's pitching that well right now, but you can't overlook the fact that Keuchel knows what the playoffs are about. He knows how to get outs in the playoffs. He knows what to do there. So you could, Keuchel, I think I want to say it was a suspended game this year where someone else pitched 1 inning and he came in and threw like 4 or 5 behind him. So you could do that too. I mean, you have a plethora of options. One thing that Rick Hahn has said a number of times and Tony La Russa has said a number of times is it's good to have the problem of too much talent. It's good to have too many choices and too many things to choose from that are good options for you.
What's more important for a White Sox postseason run, all this pitching or the offense?
I think the pitching. I think pitching always wins. We saw that in 2005 with the great Sox staff that, did something that will never happen again, the 4 straight complete games. And literally, I think they were 2 outs away from 5 straight complete games in that ALCS. I think Contreras went like either 8 1/3 or 8 2/3 in that first game. So, you're going to face other really good teams. This is not going to be, a Cubs team that's just trying to get through the season, or it's not going to be an Orioles team that's just does not have starting pitching. You're going to face, elite teams like Tampa and Houston and maybe Oakland or the Yankees or the Blue Jays. Look at the Blue Jays who have the same kind of offense as the Sox. I mean, they could throw out there Robbie Ray, Ryu, and I think Manoah is his last name. So, I mean, that's a pretty good 1, 2, 3. And, I mean, the Yankees will throw out Cole. You're going to face a lot of number ones and number twos in the postseason. So it really is the pitching that can hold, and not just the starting, but 1 through 12 or 13, whatever you take, that can hold the other team down and, make it a lower scoring game that you can win. And then it's great, like we saw in 05 in the LDS, where their offense kind of exploded the first couple games against Boston. So that will happen too. But again, I don't think there's that much difference between like the first seed in the AL and the last seed, assuming Seattle doesn't get in there. Because I think, Seattle's a nice story this year, but they're not as good as the other top teams. So if it's like, Tampa, Houston, White Sox, Oakland, Yankees, I mean, there really isn't a ton of difference between Tampa, New York, and that. I think any one of them could win it. Any one of them could go out in the first round. It's just, how things kind of line up and match up.
So if everyone stays healthy, how far do the White Sox go here in 2021?
Well, before the season, I predict them to get to the LCS, and I'm still going to hold to that right now. I'm not sure if they're going to get to the World Series, but I think, they're one of the better teams in the American League, if not the best American League team. So I think they definitely will have a chance to get to the World. I think they win at least a round, and then we'll see past that. But I mean, they're getting everyone healthy, and they're getting everyone healthy with plenty of time to get work and at bats and everything else. So I think it should be it should be a good run. It should be an interesting put. And the best thing though about the Sox, and the Cubs had this too, as much as people are crushing the Cubs right now, because let's face, we talked about this, they're not a very good team. They did win a World Series in 2016, and they did arguably have the greatest run in Chicago baseball history, which is not saying a ton about Chicago baseball, I guess. But, I mean, they went, 15, 16, 17 LCS. They went to the playoffs 5 times. If the Sox get in this year, which they will, it'll be the first time in their franchise history they've gone to the playoffs back-to-back seasons. But the good thing is they have their young core locked up. They have, some of their key guys like Lance Lynn locked up. They have options for Kimbrel and Hernandez. I think they have if Rodon should leave through free agency, you have a guy like Kopech who steps in the rotation. So I think this is not a one-off thing for the Sox. If, for them, let's say they get not upset. Let's say they lose in the first round, which would be hugely disappointing for this team. Well, it's not like, okay, back to the drawing board. Now what do we do? It's like, okay, we go get him next year. Or you can even go just take that out further. If they lose in the LCS or the World Series, it's still, all right, we got everyone together. Let's take what we learned and go after it next year.
Scott Merkin, still here on Sports Talk Chicago. Scott, a few more questions before we finish up. First off, your reaction to Hawk Harrelson's Hall of Fame induction is what?
Oh, I think it's great. I think the world of Hawk Harrelson. I think he's a great broadcaster. I think he's a great storyteller. He's a great kind of figure in the game. I was honored. Myself and Daryl Van Schouwen had our names mentioned in there, which was kind of cool. It was good seeing him when he was at the press box I guess it was a week ago Wednesday at this point, and he threw out the first pitch. And, a well-deserved honor. He's given a lot to this game. He'll tell you he's been part of the game for parts of 8 decades. And, I think people sometimes misconstrue, they talk about maybe Hawk Harrelson or the great Harry Carey in the later parts of his Cup broadcasting career, that they were, kind of homers. Well, Hawk readily admits that he was a homer, but Hawk also could be very tough on the team too. Hawk didn't kind of turn the other cheek when the team made mistakes or made glaring errors. He would point it out. So I think, he was a true legend in the game, and I really appreciate his work and just appreciate him as a person. And turning 80, I believe, right around Labor Day. So, and as he said, that's a lot of years in his 80. So he's lived quite a life. So it'll be good for him to celebrate that milestone.
And Scott, before we finish up today, last question: how often do you forget where you park?
Well, I've kind of marked it down now, but what I'm worried about is that, before, as we're taping this, I'm going to the Field of Dreams game, and I hear the parking is a little, spread out. So I'm hoping that after the game, when it's dark, and I'm guessing I'm sure there's plenty of lights out there, but it's also in the middle of cornfields, right? So I'm hoping I can find my way, or I may be sending, and I hope there's wireless and cell phone signals in there in case I do get lost. But yeah, more often than I'd like to admit, but I've been better about it later. Monitoring where I do park and kind of reminding myself, because when I'm not covering the game, I'll go 3 or 4 days sometimes without driving my car, so it's kind of easy to forget where it is.
Well, Scott, thank you so much for joining me. Best wishes for the rest of the season. Can't wait to catch up again soon, especially as the Sox make this great run. Thank you so much.
Anytime, John. Thanks for having me.